We gotta go to the bullpen. Welcome to the Highland Bullpen, the all-new podcast bringing America's pastime to Scotland's shores. It doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer heading for Cooperstown or you're fresh out of the minor leagues. This is the podcast for you.
Okay guys, welcome to another episode of the Highland Bullpen, and very easy highlight of the week for us in the Highland Bullpen, because this is the week we were all waiting for, as Daz Cameron was called back up to the majors. Clan Cameron over in Scotland, absolutely delighted to see our man Daz back playing for the Tigers, having been called up after some good batting numbers and obviously great outfielding at the Toledo Mud Hens. Daz, difficult getting into Major League batting, but delighted to say on his second appearance, where he came in as a substitute. I'm not quite sure. I know we get pinch hitters. Substitutes in baseball is something I've not really got my head around. I was going to say maybe his batting as well had been a little bit of a sticky start, but we'll come back to sticky stuff later in the show, I think, tonight as well. But he did what every young lad making it to the majors wants to do. Daz hit a home run as well. So we're absolutely delighted. Delighted for Daz, his family, obviously his dad, Mike, Major League player, all-star. Well done, Daz. We even fitted you into our fantasy league team on Sunday, just to make sure at that end of season celebration, when the medals are handed out, you can be up there collecting a medal for representing the team at some point. So I'm happy. That's all I wanted from this season. I knew the Tigers weren't going to the World Series. Does anyone want to talk about their highlight, and not to mention the fact that they've pumped the Tigers over the last week as well, Dave Jr.?
Well, I was just going to add my congratulations, because given that yesterday the Scottish national team failed a little bit in their start to a European Championships campaign, it was nice to have some form of Scottish win this week. So we will hold on to it with both hands and ride that Daz Cameron train till it reaches the station, Alan.
Brilliant. I was horrified. I saw something on ESPN. There's some guy got a sports show in America, and he's got some sort of little incident every day where he says, like, this is amazing, but this should never have happened, and no prizes for guessing which worldwide sporting event he took from Scotland's reappearance at a major international championship. But on to Friday. You might be listening to this before we pump England in the second game. What do you make of that, Dave Senior? You highlights for the week, other than an England winning over Croatia and looking forward to Scotland, or what's been happening in your baseball world with the Red Sox?
Well, quite a lot with the Red Sox, but I did look up the Daz Cameron thing, and I think he did come on as a pinch hitter, didn't he? But he played in the outfield, didn't he? And he made a fantastic diving catch. That was before, and then wasn't there a rain delay because they were down? What was it? Was it 4-2?
Yes.
Into the
ninth.
In the ninth inning, and it was raining pretty heavily, but they do play through that. And I think it might sound like I'm getting it in for Tony La Russa, but he came out, didn't he, to complain? So he came out, and then almost straight away the tarp came out, because I guess he knows that, if the game can get called and they're ahead. But there was a 47-minute rain delay, and then Daz came out, did his stuff, but bummer. It's, they didn't quite do it, did it? That was meant to be a joke, because I think...
The pitcher.
Did he score off, was it Crochet?
Yes, he knitted that one together nicely.
Yeah, he was unravelling a bit, and then we've done all these jokes in the past. But yeah, that was great, and it's good to see him doing well. So hopefully we'll see more of Daz, and let's get him in full-time into the fantasy team. But I think he's going to be in and out of the Tigers, isn't he? So,
I think it adds another strand to our love of the game. Without going too deep into the Tigers' woes just now, to put it quite simply, it's not a great season, but for a team which is still going through a transition, instantly, and I'm not a Tigers fan, I can point to the likes of a Daz Cameron's success, Badu in the outfield. But, for a team that isn't doing well, you've got those two stories which are great. They're fantastic for people that don't know about baseball, that just like to know good sporting stories. And I think it adds another. It's great. So every team's got a story, every player's got a story, and it's great watching these things unravel night after night.
What unravelled for the Red Sox and Dave? How have they gone this week?
Yeah, it's a very eventful week. I think last week you did highlight that they were playing the Astros. It was 7 games in 7 days at Fenway. They almost got swept by the Astros in Houston. Yeah. Won the final game in that series to only lose 3-1. But the Astros, I think they look like probably the best team I've seen Red Sox play. They're really, very dangerous hitting team, but also good starting pitching. I understand that, and even our friend Rob on his podcast seems to think that their sort of one weakness might be the bullpen. So the first couple of games, Red Sox lost 7-1 and 3-8, and then had this amazing game where pretty much everything happened. It'd take a whole show to talk about just the bottom of the 6th inning, but I think as usual, I think I said previous week that I'd watched the game up until a certain point, and then the very next inning was that perfect inning from the Yankee pitcher, and then I think I got as far as the 5th of the 6th inning. It was a 7-7, I think. It finished up 12-8 with this incredible 6th inning. We'll maybe talk about another time, because we were going to discuss at some point the infield fly rule. And this came into play during this 6th inning, along with just about every other incident you could think of. There was 9 or 10 batsmen came up, a lot of runs scored. There was guys walked in, there was a hit by pitch. There was a sensational error in the outfield. I think it was a windy night. And then there was this strange infield fly rule that was probably applied correctly. There was a little bit, not exactly controversy, but question marks over it. And then after that series, there was a 4-game series with Toronto Blue Jays, who were doing well in the same division. And they ended up doing well to get a split out of that. They lost 1 game by 18 runs to 4. Those 7 games, I'll give you the aggregate score. Not something you really see doing a lot in baseball, but I think increasingly they're looking at the runs for and against and working out sort of power, who's the power team. And in those 7 games, the Red Sox, if I've read them up correctly, the Red Sox scored 30 runs, but they conceded 54.
Wow.
Yeah. Last night they won a game 2-1 in walk-off win, and they won a couple of close ones of 6-5. Since I said my favourite score was 6-5 a couple of weeks ago, they had 2 great wins at 6-5. So it just shows you, but they've taken 2 sort of big losses at 14-8, that 18-4 one. I haven't actually watched the whole of the highlights of that, but that was pretty sore. I think some of the starting pitching has taken a few hits literally. So we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone has 18-4 as their favourite score. That's obviously one to consider.
A few Toronto fans now, I should think.
I never heard this mentioned, but I know somebody somewhere monitors all the different score lines you get in baseball, and it's obviously fairly unusual to get a new one. But I can't imagine there's been many 18-4 games in baseball. But I think we probably should look at a stat of the week. And Dave Jr., I know you came across a fantastic statistic. It shouldn't really exist, but it does. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about that one?
Yeah, so again, it comes back to what we talk about, that there's someone out there. I'd love to see MLB HQ, which is hard to say in itself, but that place must go about 50 floors underground with a bunch of geeks that have never seen daylight in the place. What Alan's going to go for 2 weeks, all inclusive, next year. Then we never come back.
I just think that is. Does it get any better?
No. But I've mentioned the White Sox injuries this year, and we've been hard hit. I think, although having a look at some other teams, I think every team's been hit at some point. So are you any worse off than anybody else? Potentially, depending which position you're looking at. But I think all teams are having to cope with injuries, so it's an even playing field. However, a stat was thrown up on the screen the other night that the White Sox have had 16 injuries this year, where it doesn't classify as day-to-day, which would be where you're monitoring a player on a day-by-day basis to see if they're eligible. But it looks as if, and again, it's perhaps a point for debate on another day, but there's different types of injury lists where you can move players, and it gives a bit of certainty over how long someone will be out. And I think that might have to do more with calling another player up in their stead, which is, again, a really clever way to go about these things. But of the 16 injuries that the White Sox had registered, on the exact day that player is marked as being injured, the White Sox have went 12 for 4 in those 16 games. So I think that's just fantastic. They were actually talking about the psychological aspect. If you're a football team and you've got star striker Alan Cameron up front, on the day of the game, he drops out, what's the impact on the team? And I think that's the angle that they were looking at. How have the team bounced back on that day to losing someone, your starting team, and bringing in a replacement? Or is it that the replacements have come in and done really, really quite well in those days as well? So I thought that was a great stat. 12 for 4 on days where you've signed some players off for a while. So I'm not sure, Dave, if you've kind of seen anything like that before in the past.
No, but I was just thinking about the England match, because there was, Scotland as well. Tierney was out injured, quite an important player. And similarly, perhaps not, Maguire, the centre-half, was ruled out. And they brought in Mings, who had an extremely good game. But actually, he's left-sided, isn't he? Centre back. They played Trippier, which was a surprise move, as left back. Most people thought, well, he's in there because he's quite good at free kicks and dead balls. But apparently the biggest reason that he was picked ahead of Shaw and Chilwell, the other two excellent left backs England have in the squad, was that he's very experienced and was going to kind of talk Tyrone Mings through the game. And I thought that was really interesting and made quite a lot of sense, actually. You possibly get that in to a certain degree in baseball as well. You've got to have a kind of experience and youth mix. And if you've got a lot of injuries, young lads coming in, maybe, they would bring in a veteran guy to help them along. But they do have big squads, don't they, anyway, in baseball. But it's got to make its mark on them. But the White Sox seem to have a good setup.
Could you perhaps, using that example, if you had a new pitcher, would you maybe look to use a wily old veteran catcher to help them through the game? Some
pitchers have their own catcher anyway, don't you? You'll possibly see that, won't you? That number 2 or number 3 catcher will always come in for a certain pitcher. I don't know why that might be. They just know each other's signs or particular pitches. So, it makes sense, doesn't it? Actually, in all sports.
Yeah, confidence as well. I should probably say from a Highland bullpen perspective as well, in the England game, delighted to see Leeds United's Calvin Phillips playing very well. Got a lot of good write-ups. And did he not? It was an assist for the goal as well?
Yeah, it was him who put the ball through. Yeah, really. He played slightly further forward than he does with Leeds. Leeds plays like a 4-1-4, don't they? And he's the holding player, but he's got a fantastic passing range. In this game, he had a bit more license to go forward as an attacking option. He played well. I'm really couldn't be more pleased because he's not only is he a Leeds United player, he's a Leeds born and bred lad, isn't he? You know, really good, because now there's talk about him. You know, he has a good tournament and other teams will start getting interested. But famous last words, but you know, I couldn't see him moving from.
He'll be well
anytime soon.
He'll be well.
Smithy was a famous one, and he gets, but he went to Man United when Man United were at the top of the game, and Leeds had all that financial trouble. Yeah. And I don't really blame him for that. It was a bad situation, and well, he went. Yeah. But I don't see Phillips doing that, because Leeds have produced a lot of good players, you know, the last 15 years, haven't they? But because they had the financial situation and they were in the Premier League, they haven't been able to keep on to them. Now they should be able to keep on to them and attract other players. So I look forward to seeing the next game.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a question for our American friends and baseball fans: is which teams should your local born and bred star players not move to? So moving from Leeds to Manchester United was not the right thing to do. So in the baseball world, just drop us a line with your thoughts on that. I also had a stat of the week, but it's actually, apparently it's the first time it's happened. But it's also, I think, it's a bit too conventional to be awarded the trophy. I think I love Dave's 12 for 4. I love the fact that was put on TV. It breaks my heart that once again it confirms that I'll never create a stat that is not considered in baseball. But the Tigers at the start of this week used 9 pitchers in a 9 innings game, and it's the first time that they've used 9 pitchers in a 9 innings game and won, which is quite surprising. I thought perhaps using that depth of the bullpen is maybe quite a recent thing. I guess maybe 15, 20 years ago, they might not have gone so deep into a bullpen. Plus, I guess when you're going into the bullpen, you're probably not going to be winning many games if you're using 9 different pitchers. So exciting to see.
Yeah, plus they've got that 3-batter rule as well now, haven't they? So you can't bring in a pitcher just to face one guy, which they might have done in the back, matchups, lefties, righties, guys who the pitcher has got out numerous times before. So I think they've actually got to face, they don't have to get 3 guys out, do they? But they've got to face 3 different batters. So that was pretty amazing.
In terms of hero or heroine of the week, I know we've chatted before about an incident where a fan caught the ball in the crowd, and I think this one was the one we talked about before, slightly controversial because the outfielder was hoping to catch it at the same time. But did either of you see the young lady with the baby catching the foul ball this week?
Yes, I couldn't tell you the teams involved, Alan, but I think during one of the White Sox games, I think they cut to this and actually just highlighted, what a cool moment. I've got to say, my heart was in my mouth a little bit. I'm not entirely sure she was focused on the baby 100% of the time. I'm sure she's she wouldn't have done anything unless she felt absolutely safe and secure. But there was a bit of me thought, why reach for that? But why just let the ball come over, or let your friend grab the ball? There's no need. But yeah, it's just, again, it's cool seeing fans catching balls at the stadium. I'm sure they've missed that for the last 12 to 18 months. So it's cool seeing people taking that memento home. I think we seem to mention it every couple of weeks when there's a fan catching a ball or nice moments in the crowd. If you'll allow me a little moment, I don't know if you caught during one of the White Sox Tigers games this week, one game in particular when they seemed to move away from talking about the game, which might tell you the direction the score was going in. There was a child in the crowd, and a couple of years ago, on one of Alan's visits to Detroit, he brought my son back a kind of foam bat and ball, which he's still got to this day. And the child in the crowd actually had the same bat. And the commentary team at this point, so I didn't mention this to you guys, this just came to me, but they started noticing that the child, a Detroit fan, was swinging at the exact same time as the Tiger batter. So after a while, they started on the main screen matching up time for time the child with the batter, absolutely mirroring the swing, and it was great. And after a while, I think the kid's mum or showed him that it was on TV, and other kids were coming over. By that point, I think the White Sox were quite heavily in front, and a lot of people had just left the game knowing that it was over, which left a bit of room for kids to run about and have fun. But I think that's great that you can have family occasions at the stadium. The game might be over, but you know what? We're going to have a good time. And that was quite a nice moment for me to see, Al.
I'm not sure it was a baby girl or a baby boy, this Padres fan, San Diego Padres fan, at a home game at Petco Park. So Yu Darvish pitch, which it's actually a Chicago Cubs pinch hitter fouled away. So for those of you who are a bit worried, the ball had bounced once or twice, so it wasn't like a full-on straight hit straight into her arms. But well done there. So that was a great one to see.
I saw her described in the article as a multitasking madre. Yes. Nicely done. And that actually, Dave talking about the focusing on a young lad. I think that going back to the Daz Cameron home run, I read in that article that the fan who got the baseball that hit, it was his first major league home run. So they met up with the fan afterwards. I think this is something that they do a lot, isn't it? And the fan gave Daz Cameron the ball in exchange. They do a trade, don't they? And he got a signed ball in return. So that's a nice tradition that they've got going. Yeah. It's probably made more easy with social media to arrange the meet afterwards. But I think that's always been done. And
I don't know if you picked up as well on the White Sox and Tigers game. It was possibly just on the Tigers feed, but they interviewed a chap by the name of Zach Hempel. And so if people want to find Zach Hempel on Twitter, he's known as the foul ball guy. So this guy goes to all the different ballparks, goes to different grounds and catches foul balls. And he had an amazing amount of balls from that game. I think from a series, I think he had something like 20 foul balls. And he also gets them in practice as well. I'm intrigued. I've followed him on Twitter. We'll find out a bit more about him. Why he's obviously gets himself in the right position, but he's also, is he not, I need to find out a bit more, is he not breaking one of the rules that you're supposed to get these and give them to kids? He can't go home with 20. We'll let him go home with one from every game maybe, but that seems a bit much. Very quickly, reference to another defeat in the UK Baseball Podcasters Fantasy League. A 5-3 defeat, a couple of drawn categories with the Newmarket Greyhounds of Extra Innings UK podcasting. They cover a lot of UK baseball stuff, so give those guys a listen, even if they managed to beat us. We're still in 5th place, still hanging on to a playoff place, but it's now looking like quite a tight battle between 5th and 8th place. We struggled across a few different categories last week. Our batting didn't do too badly. Tim Anderson and Robbie Grossman did fairly well. They were battling it out for Player of the Week honours. Tim got our 3 stolen bases off the week, so we won that. category, and he'd four. They both had 4 runs. Robbie had twice as many RBIs and a couple of home runs. So his overall batting averages were pretty good. So pretty happy with that. Dylan Cease, Gilbert, the Mariners, and Boyd of the Tigers all won 1 win for us, which helped us win that category. And we drew 0-0 in the saves and hold. Neither of us could get a save or a hold. So we'll be back on it this week. We're playing Fly Ball to the Moon, who I think are in 2nd place just now, 2nd or perhaps 3rd place.
As our season has kind of dipped slightly, but I still think we, or you and Dave, are doing fantastically well pulling it together every week. But you do think, you go back to football, that old adage that you really need 4, 5, 6 of your first 11 playing strong each week to get wins. I'm thinking about from a baseball point of view, because at the start of this season, we had the Red Sox, the White Sox, and the Mariners all doing very, very well. And the Tigers were still performing to a pretty decent level. I think the Tigers and the Mariners have both dipped recently. And you think that, you wonder if their dip in form also, given that that's half of our potential team, means that our own form has dipped as well. I know that we've maybe got more Sox players in there than anyone else, but it's interesting that you really do need that contribution from across the board.
Yeah, we lost some very close ones in the categories, and I think that's going to happen over. It's just like real baseball, isn't it? Over 162 games. It's our 10th week.
Yeah.
We've had some close wins, haven't we, in the early few weeks, and we just missed out, didn't we? And there's a sort of good example of bad luck, which I think we were going to talk about quality starts today. Yeah. And I did notice that Eovaldi was pitching last night, and he pitched almost with 6 2/3 innings, didn't give away an earned run, only give up 4 hits, and he didn't get the win. Red Sox got the win, but he missed out because he left them in with a 1-run lead, but it wasn't maintained. I think they gave up a home run to that man Vlad. He's the best, isn't he, in the 9th, and so he missed out. And that's sort of the definition of a quality start, is that the starting pitcher must pitch at least 6 innings and allow 3 earned runs or fewer. So that is a stat which is wide of the win stat, so that you can see a pitcher, if he's doing his job, which is to prevent runs and gets out. And apparently, I got this straight from I was familiar with that term, but I didn't know the origin of it. And it was a sports writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, John Lowe, not the Dart player, but he coined the term in 1985 as a means to gauge whether a pitcher did his job, and apparently also created another wrinkle to go along with the stat. He called quality starts in which a pitcher got the loss tough losses. So that's definitely a tough loss. If you do, pitch almost 7 full innings, you don't give up a run, your team wins and you don't get the win. And he also called non-quality starts in which a pitcher earns the win as a cheap win. And I think this is what they're sort of baseball, they're trying to eradicate the luck element from stats, aren't they? So that they can really hone in on what a player is actually achieving, in an accountable way. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how these stats do come up, and I think they're very valid. And you do hear commentators say this is a pitcher who has got a good run support. So you can have pitchers. I think this happened in the early part of the season, where I think it was Nick Pivetta was looked at as a sort of pretty lucky starting pitcher for the Red Sox, because he was pitching well, but he might give up 3 or 4 runs in his 5 or 6 innings. But the Red Sox were hitting well when he pitched, and they'd maybe pick up the win, because the Red Sox would be hitting 6 or 7 earned runs in his start, whereas Perez was a little bit more. Garrett Richards a bit more unlucky, and he was pitching just as well, but he was leaving the game with a loss situation because his hitters hadn't been fortunate enough to get a hit. So I think that's a good stat. So well done, Mr. Lowe, for introducing that.
One of the things we've been aware of before, but we've not probably spent an awful lot of time looking at, but it's interesting, and I know you've been looking at this week, is the All-Star game. Tell us a wee bit about how the All-Star game, the teams are selected, and what we should be looking out for in terms of our 4 teams and who gets there and how.
Thanks, Al. So the All-Star game, I'm not sure if you gentlemen have looked at it or watched the game over the years. It looks to be a great occasion to watch. I think perhaps even the night before there's a bit of an event with the home run derby. I don't know if that still takes place, but I've seen highlights of past ones, and that just looks really kick-ass. It looks pretty cool. But in terms of the All-Star selection process, for the next couple of weeks, it looks as if fans across the world, you don't need to be a season ticket holder. You don't need to be signed up to MLB TV. Anybody can vote. You can effectively vote for your favourite outfield players. And what happens is, I think by the end of that, there will be, by my count, a lot of players then selected, at which point 2 managers, one for the American League, one for the National League, whittle that down slightly. And they will also select the pitchers who then join that particular outfit. So again, there's some fantastic names there. Alan, Richard, you'll need to excuse me, but at the moment, going by the latest MLB numbers, we don't seem to have any Mariners or Tigers in the running. If you allow me to run through the positions, I don't know. Have you guys seen the latest names?
I've only had a quick look, and I'd appreciate your insight to this, because my quick look, it was basically you could go down and you could vote for every Tigers player, and I thought, well, why would you not? So the only reason the Tigers players don't win is some people are either neutral or they don't have enough supporters.
I think the supporters element really comes into it, Al. And we had this debate last week where we thought, well, could you just vote for your own team, or do you really want to see? Are you a big American League fan? Do you want to see your guys taking on the National League, and do you want the best of the best out there? So there's each person, you're given 5 votes a day. Not anything to do with positions, just 5. You can select 5 teams per day to go forward. So it's up to you. You could vote for the Tigers 3 times. You could just put in your friends' players that they like. Who knows? At the moment, I think we've got a good bit of representation. I would love to see a Tiger in there. I'd love to see a Mariner. It'd be great. I'm sure that every club would like to see at least one of their players involved. I wonder, even when it comes to pitching, if the managers look, and potentially the MLB might look to have all clubs represented in some level. So who knows? They might think, right, we've already got 5 Boston guys. Why are we going to pick a Boston pitcher? Let's get a guy, from Seattle. So I don't know if there's a rule there that you must have one from every club. I don't know the detail, but I think it'd be a great moment to see that kind of the best of your league being represented, and seeing one of your guys going out there representing your club. That'd be pretty cool. With baseball not really having a big international scene, I'm sure it'll get shot down for that, and there's tin cup matches take place somewhere at some point. But it looks as if this is a real way to represent your club, would be in the All-Star game.
2 other things I'll make a comment on this. Mike Cameron, Daz's dad, tweeted something about saying, leave it to the players. So I don't know if that's a controversial opinion or not, but he said your peers will pick the best players to go in and represent. And interesting, Dave, your approach as well, perhaps suggesting let's get players from all teams. But Dave Senior and myself have come up with a new venue for the Home Run Derby. Next year it's going to be in Dingwall.
Why is that?
Well, they'll just be hitting dingers all the time.
Boom!
You set me up. So, yeah. Dave, do you have any? You paid much interest to the All-Star game in the past? Any thoughts on it?
It's a big event, isn't it? I think it always has been, historically. I think if you're watching MLB games when they go to a commercial break, they show highlight reels, don't they, from recent years, but also from past years. And there's a couple of things that are coming there for the All-Stars. As a Boston Red Sox fan, Pedro Martinez had a significant contribution to an All-Stars game sort of 15, 20 years ago. And we haven't mentioned him for a while. I'm sure Ted Williams, going back even to the 40s and the 50s, he didn't. I'd need to look it up to get the exact thing. I'm sure he hit a home run or two in one of them. But yeah, I voted actually. I voted yesterday just the once, but you can vote 5 times if you wish. And I voted again today. And I'm not voting just for every Boston Red Sox player, although I did end up voting for 4 or 5. I like Verdugo. I think he's had a great season. And yeah, Devers, Bogarts, JD. But one guy I did decide I'm going to vote for, and I don't like what's happening. And he gets booed wherever he goes. And this is the Houston Astros are getting booed wherever they go because of that, the controversy going back to 2017. But in particular, one guy seems to be getting it everywhere, including Boston Red Sox, and it's Jose Altuve, the second baseman, and he's a great wee player, and I'm not quite sure exactly why he's being singled out. Again, I was listening to Rob Fontenot's Astros baseball podcast, and he was interviewing our other friend, Terry Cushman, who does the used to be called Benny and the Best, but it's now, excuse me for saying so, Bastards of Baseball. And amusingly, Rob said, they were discussing the recent Astros series, and he did say, okay, how come you guys are booing Altuve? I thought we were brothers in cheating, because of course, the Red Sox and Cora were implicated, well, more than just implicated in that whole thing, weren't they? So that was quite fun. So I'm voting for Altuve, and I'm quite happy to put in a vote for it. I think when you do go in and vote.
So do you think that would be an interesting way or an interesting approach to take in football? Can you imagine an SPFL team taking on, you could have an old firm select versus the best of the rest at the end of the season?
I'd love something like that. It would, an old firm select might not be the fairest. Who's going to support them? Are you going to be cheering McGregor passing the ball to Edward? Not that either of them would obviously have got in the team, but that's an interesting concept. You could have fun with an SPFL All-Star game where you had Rangers and Celtic players on different sides, but it's how you decide which teams are in one half and which teams are in the other half. But a little bit of controversy last week in the world of baseball, and it's been going on for a wee while, but this spider tack, or the sticky substance that pitchers will be using to make their to help themselves, and it all came to light with that interview with Gerrit Cole, where they asked him if he had ever used anything. I think as a cyclist, the comment I would make, his reply reminded me of Lance Armstrong, who of course never doped or took blood substances or did anything to help himself while cycling until he chose to admit it on the Oprah Winfrey show. It was a bit of a bizarre response, and it's quite good because it's actually brought the whole topic out into the open. There's a lot we can talk about there, but I think one of the things we thought, well, tell me about other sticky substances or other substances that people might use in different sports that potentially are allowed or not allowed that would give them a little bit of an advantage. Sticky gloves for goalkeepers aren't going to work very well, because how does he then get rid of the ball once he's caught it?
That was one of the points that I heard somebody talking about with this substance, which has the great name of spider tech. And it's used it's industrial use, isn't it, for sticking concrete to other bits of concrete. And somebody said they actually use this in the World's Strongest Man tournament. And, I don't know, do you watch that, Dave? When they carry that big sort of heavy metal, massive cannonball type thing, and to allow them, because it's a ball, it's a sphere, it's quite hard to grip. So I think they're allowed to use the substance to grip them. They use spider tech. Personally, I would go with pelican grip, which is apparently another substance similar, which might be being used allegedly by pitchers. But yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? There seems to be acknowledged that there's definitely something going on here, and this might be accounting for some of the pretty low batting averages that you're seeing across the entire Major League Baseball at the moment.
Tell me, Dave, in terms of cricket, what substances a batsman or indeed a bowler might use that would be legal or illegal that might give them an advantage?
I think they're allowed. The bowlers it's slightly different, although they definitely historically and still bowlers will find ways of affecting the ball in their interest so that they get a little bit more movement out of it. It's slightly different in cricket in as much as they play with the same ball nearly all day. They play 6 hours, and which is pretty amazing. It's only like two baseball games, really, isn't it? But it's like a double header, basically. But they play all day, and games will go on for 4 days. A test match will go on for 5 days, and they will use the same balls. A different bowlers will be bowling during the course of the day, and some of the bowlers, they like to swing the ball. So what they will do is and you can do this legally, you shine one side of the ball. It's a leather ball, slightly different, to very similar size and weight to a baseball. So they will shine one side of the ball and leave the other one. Well, they'll try and rough it up, actually, which is where you do get different substances being used to scratch the side of the ball, so that the ball will move more quickly through one side and move away from the batsman, so it's more difficult for the batsman. There'll be other ways to rough it up, but they can use the sweat and shine it on their trousers, which you do see that happening. But there's been some very highly publicised instances of real sort of intentional, planned doctoring of the ball. Even, I hate to really highlight the Australian one, because the England players have done it as well. In fact, let's call out Mike Allerton, who was the captain, and he actually had some soil and dirt in his pocket, and he was seen, like, the ball was passed to him, and as he was passing it to the bowler, just before that, he would apply some of the soil to one side of the ball to rough it up. All cricketing sides have been guilty to certain degrees of doing that, and you go back to the 1950s or something like that, and it was Brill cream that they would have in their hair, and they would use that to I don't think the youngsters today, with hair wax, I suppose it might be used to the same degree. I think, Vaseline as well is something that's used in sport, and they would put that on their eyes or their ears to protect it, sun cream. And I think it's applying a foreign substance to a ball in cricket or in baseball is not allowed, and there's certain degrees of that. Some are sort of accepted as historically being used, but if you've got somebody using an industrial glue somebody jokingly said, well, how are they releasing the ball? How is it not sticking to the wand? They're getting extra grip on the ball, and they're able to throw it faster, and they're also able to get more rotation on it. And in fact, I've heard somebody said that it could be dangerous, because this is why they think they're seeing pitchers, more pitchers are throwing 98 mile an hour fastballs and higher. But there's also, and I've seen this happen in many games, where there's more balls going very near to the batsman's head. In fact, I've seen a couple getting hit on the helmet by fastballs, and they're reckoning this is why it's happening, because they're really overreaching themselves to get this fastball because of this substance. Now, let's wait and see what happens, but it seems to be being taken extremely seriously. Almost, and that interview with Garrett Cole was pretty damning, really, wasn't it? That, it sounds like there's definitely something going on pretty wholesale, and he didn't want to say yay or nay.
Yeah, I guess I should say, in terms of plus it reminded me of the cycling. I think the cycling perhaps had slightly different issues, in that we were talking about drug substance use and blood doping as well. So there are different levels of substance use. It's the same philosophy when you talk about the historical use of it, because was it Anquetil said in the tour back in the 50s and 60s, they don't expect us to do this on bread and water, do they? It was, when you read some of the stories of these guys in the old Tour de France, they would get to the small village, there'd be a bar at the bottom of the hill, and they'd down a couple of brandies, take some amphetamine, pretty much as pain relief to drug them out. And bizarrely, they took no water, because they viewed water as that would weigh you down. So they wanted us to be as light as possible. And the tragic consequences, British cycling knows that well. Cycling had to do something about that, and blood doping. They were doping within to the limits they were allowed to go. So it was dangerous stuff. But yeah, other sports, Dave Jr., have you got other examples of sports where people would do stuff, shouldn't do stuff?
I think every sport's going to be littered with it. I think a lot of the times it'll just be if they're found out, or if they manage to stay one step ahead of the science. At times, athletics is probably littered with it. Even just now, there's quite an interesting debate. I don't have the details on me, but there's a new type of shoe has been released for runners. I find this quite an interesting one, if we're able to get the detail and debate it properly one day. But it's taking real minutes off of runners' times, and we're talking about professional athletes here. So it sounds just from a shoe. So it sounds absolutely crazy. And you think to yourself, well, is a shoe cheating? It's not fitted out with any springs, or there's no rocket blasters in there. It's purely in terms of the energy it conserves, and then what it then expends as you push down on the ground. So there's been a whole lot of data coming out recently from, suddenly all of the athletes are now wearing them. But even just casual, so park runners, of which I've kind of partook myself, if they're looking to do, say, 5K, you might find someone at a 25-minute 5-kilometre run at any of the park runs held throughout the world. People with these trainers just straight away were taking a minute off of that time, which is absolutely vast. So it's really quite interesting when the science starts to get ahead. At what point does it become cheating? At what point it's still that person's body that they're just going through that? Simply, was their body being used to its best potential with that other shoe, or has this shoe helped unlock that? Or, I just think it's really quite interesting to see what defines crossing a line, or what's someone being smart.
Yeah. I look forward to the days when the Red Sox and the White Sox are matched with the appropriate shoes to give the maximum baseball performance. I think Dave's points there were quite interesting about not the equipment. My other sport is golf as well, and the ball. There's a lot of talk in professional golf about the balls and the clubs, the drivers they're using. So you're aiming towards average 400-yard drives, and well, it's not quite happening. But some guys are up at that level. Where it's not that long ago where people hitting over 300 yards was an amazing feat. So the issue with golf, and I guess you may have the same with baseball parks, is you start to make them obsolete. Because if you've got the courses we play on generally are fairly shortish for us as amateur golfers, with 350, 400-yard holes are fine, a drive and a 5-iron or whatever. But when the pros are hitting it that far, it's just crazy. And a long way removed, the world of sport, from my early days watching the Highland Games, where the tossing of the caber might well have involved putting a bit of chalk in his hand to get the caber in his hand and to toss it over, fueled by no doubt a few pints in the bar the night before, or a wee dram.
Yeah, you can't beat a good Highland Games. I've been a few actually. It's a fantastic event, isn't it? Great day out.
Yeah,
but been to the Balmoral one many years ago.
Brilliant. That the Queen usually does the Balmoral one, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think she might have been there actually.
Yeah, I think
Braemar, not
Braemar. Yeah,
sorry, not Balmoral.
The Braemar Games. Yeah, the Highland Games, for our listeners, you'll have the traditional athletic events, some grass cycling, some running, high jump, long jump, but you've also got the tossing the caber, which is probably the traditional Highland sport. They do a bit of shot put as well, which is fairly traditional, and that's probably where a lot of that we talked earlier about the lifting the stones in the world's strongest man.
Yeah, it's quite similar. There's one where they lift a weight and they have to throw it over, like it's almost like a high jump bar.
Yeah, the ones who worry me on that are the ones who throw it backwards.
Yeah,
you need to have, if you're throwing a big hammer like that, you want to know where it's going. So
technique.
So there we go, the Highland Bullpen, another week, and we're talking about the Highland Games, and we've had a few Scottish connections in there. So thanks. Enjoyed the chat again tonight, guys. It's always good.
Superb.